Councilmember Alves,
Here.
Councilmember Werdikoff,
Here.
Councilmember Richards,
Here.
Vice Mayor Hughes,
Here.
Mayor Derwin.
Here. Oral communications, this is the time in the evening when you may speak about something that is not on the agenda. However, since it is not on the agenda, we cannot take action or have a discussion. You may speak once, up to 3 minutes. Sharon, does anyone in the public wish to speak?
Rita Comas,
Okay,
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I have I guess a correction on the minutes. Is this the time or should I wait for, it's at the consent calendar?
I think technically you need to wait until it comes up on the consent calendar.
Okay, I will wait for that time.
Yes, that's really soon. Is there anybody else who would like to speak?
there are no additional hands raised.
All righty, then we will move on to the consent agenda. This is also a time for anyone in the public to speak to an item on the consent agenda. However, only the council can take action. If you would like to speak, you may speak up to 3 minutes on each item. Would anyone like to speak to an item on the consent agenda?
Rita Comas,
Rita.
Thank you for taking my call. Looking at the minutes from the August 11th meeting, during oral comments, I had mentioned that the town council did not have a quorum at that time when I mentioned it. And I was told that during the roll call, all 5 members were present. I had an opportunity since then to look at the video, and not all members were present during the roll call. And so I feel that it is not a correct representation of that meeting at that time. And if there's a question, you can actually review the video from August 11th to see.
Okay, I'm pretty sure that there was at least one person was there one person missing that night?
If I may.
Oh, Jeff had technical difficulties. Sarah was late. Is that correct?
I had technical difficulties too.
Yeah, I think we started at about 7 o'clock, and John arrived at 7:04, Jeff arrived at 7:05, and Sarah arrived at 7:06. So Rita's correct, and we'll make amendments to the minutes to reflect that, if that's the council's desire.
But for clarity, no action was taken while we did not have a quorum.
Right.
Is that correct?
I am only asking because I was told that during the roll call that all 5 members were present, which I felt that was not correct at that time. And upon review of the video, I see that that is a true statement of what I've made. And so I think for our town government, it should reflect the correct situation at that time, especially since it's associated with my name. Thank you.
Okay, we will make that correction. Are there other members of the public who would like to speak to the consent agenda?
There are no other hands raised.
Okay, bringing it back to the council. Would anyone on the council like to pull an item from the consent agenda? Jeff?
Item 5.
Okay. Anybody else? And Jeremy, should I pull item 1 so that we can make that correction, or has that already been done?
You'll just want to make a motion with the correction noted, and that'll be sufficient.
Okay. All right, so we have item number 5 is the only one that council wants to pull, correct? Okay, should I pull out item number 1 separately, or can I roll it into the other ones and say with the correction?
The latter's fine.
Okay. Would someone like to make a
Looks
motion for items 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, with the correction to item number 1.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Roll call, please. Sharon?
Councilmember Alves,
Aye.
Councilmember Warnickoff,
Sorry, aye.
Councilmember Richards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hughes,
Aye.
Mayor Derwin.
Aye. Item number 5.
Yeah, just a correction. Read page 47 under the Wildfire Committee's charter membership. The membership of this committee shall consist of 9 members appointed by the town council in concurrence with the town council. As tempting as it is to contemplate the consequences of the town council not being in concurrence with the town council, I'll simply suggest that maybe the change is that they are appointed by the mayor with concurrence from the town council. I believe that was the intent there. Is that if that is correct, I will move that we accept approve the charter change with that correction.
I think correct. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Craig seconded. Any more discussion? Roll call, please. Sharon?
Councilmember Alves,
Aye.
Councilmember Warnickoff,
Aye.
Councilmember Richards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hughes,
Aye.
Mayor Derwin.
Aye. Okay, moving on to the regular agenda. Item number 10 is a recommendation by the Bicycle, Pedestrian, Traffic Safety Committee, Portola Road and Willowbrook parking recommendation. Who will be introducing this one?
We'll turn it right over to the chair of the committee, Ed Holland, who has a presentation. This is
I do. Is the presentation available to be shared from Town Centre? I don't have it here with me to actually share screen.
I'm happy to do that. Just give me one moment and I can pull it up.
Thank you.
Here.
Good.
Hi, Ed.
It'll look a little wonky. I'm working off of the agenda, so that's okay with everybody. Can you see it?
Mhm.
I see it. Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
I'd like to point out that actually this very encompassing presentation was put together by our committee secretary, Angela Hay, who took most of the pictures and put most of the text together to it. And it was presented at our last but one August BPTS meeting for review at this town council.
Sorry. You just say next slide, Ed, and I'll move it along for you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, next slide, please. Okay, so I won't delve too much into the history of this, but we've been visiting related items to this since 2012, where we first took a look at parking along the Portola Road corridor. And I'll give you sort of time to absorb the remaining timeline. But in and amongst that, we have seen growth in demand of parking in that area, and a desire from several sets of residents in town who have attended bicycle and pedestrian traffic safety meetings, and also residents from Portola Road and residents from Willowbrook Drive, and several committee members, and therefore decided to revisit the area and draw it together as a holistic consideration for all visitor parking, and that's largely that parking that's concerned with visitation to Windy Hill, where we do see large numbers of cars parked on the weekend, both along Portola Road and at the Alpine Road end of Willowbrook Drive. So yes, next slide, please. So I won't go too far into the numbers here, but obviously weekends are the busiest times for Windy Hill visits, along the lines of what you might expect for a typical family and visitors weekend. Thank you. Next slide. So the goals are all to increase safety for road users and trail users, to recommend where parking needs to be restricted or controlled, but with particularly only a consideration to safety. This is not a residents don't like parking here kind of situation. This is a look at the best practices for safety and take a common sense view of those considerations. So that's to address the scope of roadside parking on Portola Road and Willowbrook and Alpine Road near to the trailheads. This doesn't address long-term planning for trail improvements or car park upgrades. It says here not addressed red curb painting next to driveways because that's been considered on an individual homeowner's business already. Approach to an approach made by the town by Howard and Jeremy with letters to individual Willowbrook Drive residents, and not addressed exact sign locations. So we do need to work again with a traffic engineer. I see Paul Krupke is joining us also in the panel this evening. So that those things need to be defined. It's not the committee's job to do traffic engineering, but I do want to get to that point as quickly as we can. Next slide, please. Obvious concerns. There are some designated parking areas, but there are more cars than spaces. Cars parking on Portola Road create a hazard for other road users where parking around the bend, parking into the paved shoulder, and parking on the trails. There's obviously all sorts of odd traffic behavior associated with high demand for parking, like U-turns and odd road maneuvers. And the road is busy with lots of people at weekends, including visitors, cyclists, people riding through town, folks driving through town, including and as well as the visitors. Thank you. Next slide, please. At the Alpine and Willowbrook intersection, we have recommendations which include adding red curb painting to the west side of Willowbrook Drive at the entrance to, or the intersection with Alpine, to mirror what's done on the eastern side and preserve the sight lines for traffic approaching from all directions. Repaint the curb red on the hill on the east side as well. And that justification, obviously, I've just described, which is to improve sight line and alleviate congestion at the junction, because we do quite often see cars parked on that west side all the way around the corner. So it's quite undesirable from a sight line and safety point of view. Next slide, please. The other consideration here on Willowbrook Drive is the restriction caused by the divided road area. We don't typically see parking within the divided road area, but there is, I think, a desire in this recommendation to ensure that that is the case. And also, with the preferred embodiment at the moment being red curb, to guard against creating a pinch point at the beginning, at the entrance and exit from those in either direction. So I think that should be relatively clear, but do raise a hand or ask a question if you have anything particular about that. If not, please continue. Angela also pointed out an interest where cars park in busy times along the trail between the bridge across the creek to Willowbrook, so a little further around back from Willowbrook towards Priory, and that any parking there actually ends up onto the trail, and so a restriction to use parking signage or no parking signage to prevent the blockage of the trail. Thank you. Continue, please. This is parking on Portola Road on the opposite side to the entrance to Windy Hill. The recommendation here is to expand the area of no parking signs to bound or keep out from the sharpest part of the curb, sharpest part of the curve, and to also restrict parking to only the area where the off pavement area is flattest and most accommodating to vehicles. This is obviously also to minimize road congestion, ease the path of cyclists who prefer to use the shoulder, as we've sort of designated that in our prior shoulder widening exercise back in, I think that was 2014 or 15, and that's improvement. And so not to see that blocked by car parking. Thank you. Next slide, please. The area alongside the road. The recommendation at this point will be to permit parking after the Windy Hill parking sign. Extend the parking to the north slightly with signage to indicate vehicles to park off the pavement. So the way the no parking, if you see the bottom left corner, there's a no parking to the right sign. That there's a proposal that could be safely moved a little to the left, and thereby create another couple of spaces to make up for the additional restrictions that would be incurred by making the changes at the uphill end of that zone.
Ed, would you be willing to take a question right now from Craig?
Please go ahead. I can't see all the.
Yeah, I was gonna jump in if you didn't call on me, because I realized that with the small shrunken screen with the presentation up. One comment that I heard from someone is they were asking me about permit parking and why we were going to institute permit parking. So I just wanted to clarify that where it says permit parking, that doesn't mean you apply for a permit that you display in your car. It means allow, as opposed to that there's a permit program.
That's a good clarification. So the purpose of what BPTS is recommending is to change the make changes to the restriction or otherwise of allowable parking. Not that we would instigate a permitted parking program. I don't think that's something that we have a desire to do or an ability to manage at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no additional questions on this slide, please go to the next. Thank you. Again, Portola Road near Stonegate. Recommendation here should read to allow parking because there is room off the pavement. Provide a no parking on the pavement sign and mark the south end of the area to indicate there should not be parking with an arrow pointing outside this area in line with the highway standards. Again, a justification here is that it would clearly allow a zone for a few additional spaces, but ensure that cars park on the verge and not into the shoulder. Okay, thank you. Next slide.
I think that's it.
Is that the sum total? So as put together, I think this defines things very well. I will say that in the beginning of the middle of March, I had formed this as a subcommittee study and made several requests by email to the town that we would make a better defined near to engineering level study of this and have more to recommend in terms of distances, sightlines, zones, and design engineering, and that did not come to pass. And so I feel that we have fallen behind on that to some degree. But that constitutes our recommendation. So it is really to add restriction and to better define what is allowable for parking in those two areas of Willowbrook Drive and those areas along Portola Road, with the primary purpose to improve traffic safety. And thank you. And I'm now open for questions.
Yes, thanks, Ed. Outstanding PowerPoint, Angela. Does the council have questions? Yes, Jeff.
Just generally, how, I mean, are the deputies writing a fair number of tickets in those areas where the no parking signs exist now? How has parking been there? I'm just trying to think if I feel like I haven't been in the area much on busy times.
The last part of the report that we had from the sheriff, they are writing a significant number of additional tickets specifically for parking violations. So that will obviously have a beneficial effect, if you will, not if you've received a parking ticket, obviously, but it sends a message clearly. And we have asked that will be cited for a specific violation of parking on the pavement and not completely off the paved roadway.
And the sheriff's office did weigh in on sort of these modifications, and they're comfortable with sort of where everything's placed, I assume.
We have not consulted them directly. I can't remember actually. Howard or Jeremy, can you comment to that, please?
I can, and Howard may have some follow-up. I would say that, in this case, and Ed, please correct me if I'm wrong. While we hadn't asked the sheriff's office directly about some of those issues, we also felt as though it was important to bring this forward, given the work that the committee has done on this and what we've heard from residents. The council has the authority to restrict parking without what we call a warrant. And typically we try to do that and do some additional work around this. But I think that there's been enough, this is my opinion, there's been certainly enough input from residents who have been observing things, the committee members who've been observing that this seemed totally appropriate. Like I think that for anybody who's spent any time out there on a Saturday, you can certainly see that the intersection of cars and people and bicycles is potentially a real challenge. So this certainly addresses those issues.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Okay, I have a few.
Diane, if I may, Howard and Paul are here. I don't know if Howard, you wanted to add any commentary or Paul?
I do want to add it on the question concerning if the sheriff has any opinion. We have, over the last quite a length of time, 6 months, we have asked the sheriff to keep an eye on things. They haven't really pointed out any serious violations. They haven't pointed out any serious issue is what they've told us. And I know that we've kept track of parking. Gary Nielsen has kept track of parking on Patola Road, and there has been a significant decrease since things have opened up. So I wanted to answer that question from Ed concerning the sheriff's department. We did ask him to take a look at it. We also asked the fire department also, but they haven't put in anything that's serious that warrants anything at this point. Thank you.
And I would add that this is 8 million years ago now, but back at the start of the COVID pandemic, we did restrict parking in that area. And I did have a conversation at that point with the fire department when we started allowing parking back because it was so crowded, just making sure they could get their engines and trucks through, and they said that they could. So that was certainly something that for me was a bare minimum. You know, we had to ensure that, and then that this process would go through the committees and
you're referring to the 2-lane traffic on the divided area of Willowbrook.
Yeah,
Okay.
they haven't had an issue there, but that's notwithstanding any of the good work of the committee and their observations as it relates to the intersections between people, cars, and bicycles.
Now, who will do the actual determination of how many signs, exactly where the signs are placed? And will this eventually end up at the ASCC?
Paul is our consultant traffic engineer, so he would be doing that for us. Paul, you can speak to this much better than I can. We're not talking a significant number of signs given the amount of space here. The standard is of 150 feet, I think it is, for Caltrans. So it's not a huge number of signs that we're contemplating here as part of the package from BPTS. And it's up to the council to direct where this goes next. They can direct staff to begin work on it, or they could direct it to ASCC. We're not making a recommendation.
Okay. And I'm assuming that since this has been so well vetted and it is such a thorough presentation that the neighbors are good, that they feel they're happy with this.
For the most part, that we have a good deal of a majority of support from all the neighbors that have approached us on this.
Okay. All right. Pardon me. Yes, Greg. Sorry.
This is a great presentation. A lot of work has gone into this by the subcommittee, both into studying it and then the presentation itself. And as Ed pointed out, we did look at this back in March or April or whenever it was. And at that time, I think we didn't really have a concrete enough idea of what was being asked for, which the subcommittee has now, I think, done. But I just wanted to ask Howard if he now does have enough information that he and Paul could go away and bring back a proposal to us that's more concrete about what we would need to do to make this happen, or is there still more information or anything like that that's needed? My sense is hopefully there shouldn't be at this point.
That's Craig. The thought process would be we would propose to come back with some cost to do a study, determine needs, and some concept solutions, some basic dimensions, and potentially some general cost as we break these things down into the study, design and construction. But at this point, we would separate, come back with a cost for the study, and then based on the study, come back with the cost of design and construction. Paul, did you want to add it to that?
Oh, we can't hear you.
You're on mute.
Sorry.
Paul.
Paul Krupke here. It's an honor to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity. I think that the combination of the presentation and all the good work that the subcommittee has done and the discussion tonight gives us what we need to frame this and come back with a proposal, as Howard indicated. So I don't have any other particular comments at this point.
Okay. I'm looking, I don't see any more. Howard, I see your hand up.
And it.
And Ed. Howard, was that an old hand?
I think Howard, you're on mute.
Yeah, I just want to, number one, I do want to thank the BBTS. I do want to acknowledge all their work on this. And I do want to add some additional background information. So for context, there are a lot of things in the queue right now on traffic items approved by the council. This goes back to the pedestrian safety study that the council approved. And so in the next couple of months, of the 15 locations that were approved for improvements, 9 in the next couple of months, you'll see 9 locations implemented. This is new upgraded traffic markings, pavement markings, and new crosswalk signs at 9 locations. And those are the things that we went to the council that it was incorporated with the street resurfacing project for better costs. So I just want to provide that background that of the 15, we're doing the 9 in the next couple of months. And then we have to still do the 6. Of those 6, within there are the 2 lighted crosswalk areas also. So I just wanted to provide some context also as a whole, as the council reviews these things, and that there may be some priority setting at some point with all the projects, including this one also. Thank you.
Got it. Thanks, Howard. And then, yes, Ed.
Thank you. I would still like, I would like to make one point, is that I do believe that the time we have spent since making prior changes in 2012, collecting data over that time for a significant number of years, months through COVID, out the other side as we're beginning to emerge, and still seeing an increasing baseline in demand for visitor parking at those locations, notwithstanding the seasonal variations that we typically see when Windy Hill is hotter than blazes and unpleasant to hike. And that I think the time for study is, I would like to assert that the time for study is behind us, and the time to simply move towards some design work and proposals is really where I would like to be with this.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think when Howard is saying study, Ed, I think it's really technical study to allow the design work. It's engineering as opposed to back of envelope, or I mean detailed back of envelope that you guys have done. But I think in order for Paul to actually draw something up, there's an element of study that needs to be done.
Okay, I don't see any more hands. Sharon, are there community members who'd like to speak to this item?
We have one. Telephone number 7562.
Good evening. My name is Caroline Vertongen. Thank you for taking my comments. And first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Holland and the BPTS committee for this wonderful presentation, really emphasizing how long we've been working on it. And I really would like to encourage the town council to move forward. We have enough data accumulated over all these years There's been so many traffic studies that we've done, that we've paid for. And I think, we should not wait until these other 9 projects have been completed. I'm pretty sure this can be completed at the same time. Thank you for my comment.
Thank you. Are there others who wish to speak?
Yes, Dana.
Okay.
Hi, Ed. Good job. I mean, and I know the Willowbrook people are going to be thrilled. My question really goes to Mid-Penn. Where are we with Mid-Penn and the parking lot? For a decade, I've asked, where's the planning commission in terms of looking at the conditional use permit of Mid-Penn? Because I think they could easily get another 25 cars in that parking lot. And I've been saying it, and so I wonder if you guys have had any conversations with them, or if you have any feedback about where Mid-Penn stands in all of this, because the problem is the cars can't get into the parking lot. Thank you.
Jeremy, can you address that? I mean, I know we talk about this, but is there any feedback?
I had conversations with Mid-Penn going back to when I started for the town in 2016. There has been a reluctance on the part of Mid-Penn to move forward on a serious conversation around the parking issues for a variety of reasons. Some are associated with their impressions of what happened in earlier days in 1995, when the parking lot may have been proposed to be bigger and was made smaller. Although I found that an interesting comment, because I don't think anybody who I talked to worked at Mid-Penn in 95, so I wasn't sure what that meant. I've certainly on multiple occasions said to them that parking is an issue, and there's different ways for us to approach it, and we'd appreciate a real conversation, as with the number of other issues that this council is aware of on the Hawthorne property and the trail. Mid-Penn operates at its own speed sometimes, and the council wishes to direct me to move in a different direction. I'm happy to do that. I would note that adding some additional parking at the Portola entrance would certainly be helpful, but it would not reduce. It would reduce the number of cars parked on the street, but it would not eliminate them, particularly on the busier days.
No, it wouldn't, but they also have a conditional use permit. And why haven't we looked at that, and why haven't we challenged it? So I hope, as we go forward, it seems like that's a very important piece of information. So why don't we do it?
Do you have any comment to that, Jeremy?
No.
Okay. I will point out that our representative, who is not very active in my consideration, is up for re-election next year. So that might be something to think about. Okay, do we have other members of the public who wish to speak?
Yes, Betsy.
Okay.
How do you do, council? And my compliments for putting this on your agenda tonight. I have been present for probably a year and a half now at the BPTS meeting, in part because of the significant danger that I regularly see as I cross Portola Road, approximately and exactly where we are, what the council and BPTS is addressing tonight. And just since this has become a more acute item in the last 18, 19 months, for local color, the younger bicyclists that either don't have the physical capacity to turn around and look to see if a car is coming when they are forced into the roadway by the parking of cars. The number of times I have seen such things happen without looking, and when you have cars coming in both directions, when a kid is pulling out, teenager and younger, I'm a mother of a grown son. I'm just happy he escaped such dramatic possibilities. And just on behalf of the town's liability and more than that, all of our hearts, I hope that you will weigh very carefully the other, 15 projects that are in the queue for consideration. I don't know where this stacks up amongst the other ones, but it should probably be looked at very carefully, in my opinion. Thanks so much for your time and effort to look into this matter.
Thank you. Are there other people who would like to speak?
Yes, David Cardinal.
Okay.
Hi, Dave, a quick comment. Our parking regulations are pretty arcane, although wonderful. And I don't think most people who come to our town have a clue where they can park and not park. So I know we hate signs, but my bias would be if we don't want people to park on the pavement, we're going to have to tell them that. I mean, they don't know, and they're never going to know unless we make really explicit where they can park and not park. That's my only thought. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there other hands? I don't see any.
No, there are no other hands raised.
Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the council for comments. And also, Jeremy, you said, I had asked about the ASCC and you said that was something that council could direct. I'm not really clear on that, and I'm not really clear on the timeline.
Council can, at this point, direct any further review by commissions and committees. That's the council's right. Historically, the ACC has participated in these conversations, particularly around signage.
Right.
I would imagine that they certainly have an opinion related to signage issues. I think it's fair to say historically they wanted to see fewer signs in town. I don't know what the current makeup of the ACC would have a different opinion. But the direction tonight can be that the ACC can take a look at whatever Paul produces for the town and make determinations around that. Or it can be directed that we move forward and bring something back to the council.
Okay.
That would obviously take longer.
Yep. Right. I'd like to get my colleagues' thoughts. Let's start with Craig, because he always has a lot of thoughts floating around in that head.
I'm sure, and I'm liaison to BPTS, so I've been deeply immersed in this, I guess, since 2013, maybe not all the way back to 2012. And I've been involved in the incremental solutions and the ongoing issues that persisted there. So, I think the BPTS and the council over time have done their best with the situation as it's evolved. We've faced a number of different challenges and they've changed over time. So while the area has had issues going back to 2012, it hasn't really been the same issues, and the scale of those issues has changed tremendously in the last year and a half. And I'm sure that because people came and discovered Windy Hill during the pandemic, they're going to continue coming here. So even as things reopen, we probably will continue to see more activity than we saw before, just because people didn't know we were here, and now they do. I fully agree that we need to address the area. The holistic approach, I think, makes sense. I think Howard's suggestion to come back with a proposal for essentially what staff work needs to be done in order to develop a solution that's implementable and get us to the finish line is the right way to go. If we do want to involve ASCC, which I think could well be appropriate, I'd recommend we do something along the model of what we did with the pedestrian traffic study, which is Paul and Howard brought to the ASCC a number of templates and said, here are the options here are the tools we would like to have in our toolkit. In that case, when they were looking at 15 different locations in town, in this case, it's only about 4 or 5. But I think a similar kind of approve the toolkit and then, let them engineer something within the approved toolkit that can solve the problem. I think that may be a more productive, flexible way of doing it, because as they go through and get out there on the ground and look at things, there's some art combined with engineering work that I think we're going to need to do. That I think to do it efficiently, it would be good for them to know what's gonna pass muster with the ASCC before they spend a whole bunch of time engineering something, take it to the ASCC, and the ASCC says, no, sorry, we don't like that kind of sign, and then they have to go back and do it again. I think given the length of time that I mean, just with the pandemic issues that have arisen, and the amount of effort that's gone into this already, my inclination would be to get to the finish line as efficiently as possible from here, rather than bouncing it to ASCC and then back to redesign and then back to ASCC again and so on. And I think the palette approval approach that we took with the traffic safety study seems to have worked well. So I would recommend we do that again.
What I heard was come back with a proposal to get to the finish line, which you would like us to do as efficiently as possible, and have Paul and Howard bring to the ASCC a template, or basically approve the toolkit. Is that what I heard? Okay.
Yeah, if that makes sense. I mean, Howard and Paul can nod or shake their heads if they think I'm crazy, but it seemed to have worked pretty well last time.
Okay, thanks, Craig. John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I see this as an issue that's been really well vetted. I think the Bicycle Safety Committee has done a great job and put a lot of time into it over the last few years. I also think that it looks like their proposed solution is fairly incremental, really. It's not a demand for some really big changes, and I think it leaves room for potential changes further down the road if, as Craig says, things keep evolving, which they probably will. So I also see it as a fairly simple set of solutions that probably won't need much in the way of review. I think certainly ASCC has a role in looking at the signage, as they have already in several of these locations. There's already a record of looking at signage for this exact same problem. And I think we can come back to that as to get some guidance probably for Howard and Jim. And I think the few signs that are needed will be pretty much the extent of what ASCC will need to look at. And painting the curb red, that's painting the curb red. You can't, I mean, there's not much engineering to do there. So I think it's a great start. I agree with Craig. I think we got to move ahead.
Okay, so you essentially agree with Craig.
Yes.
Sarah.
Did you just call me?
Yes. Hi,
I
Sarah.
noticed, I don't know, I noticed Ed's hand is up and I don't know what the protocol is there, but I'm
Sure, Ed. Yeah, no, the protocol is we should let Ed speak. Please speak, Ed.
Thank you to John. He touched on something that was important in the considerations we gave to what we thought towards proposing, something that would not shout, perhaps, though some negotiation over whether we use standard versus modified signage, but to apply things in a very considerate and sort of exactly complementary, but with some sensibility towards the issues we've faced in the past. So be effective, but not to shout about it. So thank you for those comments. Please go ahead.
Okay, Sarah.
I agree. It seems like it's been very well vetted, and I like the ASCC toolkit approach. So in general, also agree with Craig.
Great. And Jeff.
Yeah, I think we should move forward on it. If my only concern is if the ASCC process you're talking about it can be streamlined, isn't going to hold things up, then I think I'm fine with it. It would be nice to get this moving forward. If that is going to become a delay for some reason, I'd be okay with staff handling it, especially given that, a lot of the signage is going to be consistent with what's already out there. So I mean, there's the toolkit approach, but there's also just the fact that we already have quite a few signs in place. So either way, I mean, all things being, in ideal world, yes, I would involve the ASCC. So I do agree with this approach as long as it doesn't lead to any sort of undue delays.
Thanks, Jeff. I agree with my colleagues on all points. I do feel the ASCC should be involved. And it sounds like they can be involved in a streamlined way, and that there is a precedent for that. And the standard versus modified signage of Ed should be noted as well. I just want to say thank you, Ed, for shepherding this for so many years and for bringing it to fruition, almost. Is there a motion?
Before I
noticed
make a
Paul's-
motion, I see
Paul's hand is
Paul's
right,
hand
yeah.
is up again. Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Thank you. I expect there might be some expectations based upon what has been discussed that I just want to clarify. I want to clarify what some context about my study, the work I would do for you if approved. And first, I will again say how important the subcommittee's work is on this subject. The parking counts, observations, recommendation, discussion. I've been part of the last BPTS meeting discussion. At least listened in carefully, took lots of notes. I've also been out to the field just as I drive by on a couple of weekend days during the peak period. And I want to note that it appears to me that I hear today that this group and others think there is a distinct need to install parking restrictions in the field. That is the purpose. One of the primary purposes of my study is to establish need, and that is that is because of a couple of things. The town municipal code stipulates that the California Vehicle Code governs the use of traffic control devices, and the California Vehicle Code stipulates only those signs and traffic control devices that conform to uniform standards in the California Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices shall be installed on roadways. And then that manual offers some essential guidance to us practicing traffic engineers and civil engineers. And that guidance is to be effective, a traffic control device should meet these 5 basic requirements: fulfill a need, command attention, convey a clear, simple meaning, command respect from road users, and give adequate time for proper response. The design, placement, operation, maintenance, and uniformity are aspects that should be carefully considered by the engineer in order to maximize the ability of traffic control device to meet the 5 requirements listed. So the matters of vehicle speed, geometry, sight distance, other factors need to be carefully considered. And my objective is really to look at this from the standpoint of, are there factors not immediately observable by the driver? The use of a study, use of traffic control devices at a particular location should be made on the basis of either an engineering study or the application of engineering judgment. In my opinion, based upon all this information, the BPTS recommendation, and my relevant experience, which is over 40 years of experience, I believe that an engineering study is necessary to establish whether a need exists. If a need exists, engineering design will be required to define the scope of improvements and establish construction details, including layout and specifications. This may sound simple. I guarantee it is not. It is complex. The scope of the work would involve carefully considering all the work done to date, integrating the work that the BPTS committee has done, field observations, counts, discussions with the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District and Sheriff Deputy Andy Wee, collecting data and doing some analysis. The end result would be a statement of what the conditions are in my professional observations, what the needs are, and if there are needs, conceptual solutions and costs. So the final point I wanted to make is that there is a need to bring this to the Public Works Director and then the BPTS committee. It takes time. It's going to take time. I am most happy and honored to be asked to do this, and I've been honored to be supporting the town of Portola Valley in traffic engineering and traffic matters like this. So I wanted to say that. I don't have a schedule or a budget at this point in time, but this kind of thing does take some time. It needs to be carefully done, and I just wanted to say all this because I don't want you leaving the meeting with an expectation that my job is clear. My job is not clear. I have to do study to figure out what my job is. Thank you very much.
Just hold on a second, Craig. So, but isn't that what your proposal is about?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So my proposal, I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that I want to, my first objective is to establish whether there is a need. And that might be contradictory to what you all believe at this point in time. I may be. I can't offer. I have lots of information in front of me and some field observations over a short period of time, and need to really dig in.
Okay, Craig, and then Ed. Craig.
Yeah, I think my sense is that I'm on the same page. I think, you know, what we have from BPTS is what I would call a detailed back of envelope conception. And what I think we really need is for Howard to bring us back a proposal for a study and then a design and an implementation plan. And that would be, you know, to look at essentially the issues that are highlighted by the BPTS report, evaluate what they've suggested. But I think I at least am very well aware that the actual implementation, once we get a design and implement it, may be different in minor ways, that signs are slightly to the left or the right, or maybe different in more major ways if the study portion discovers that, you know, in the engineer's opinion, something wants to be different than what Angela and Ed had put together. And I think that would be entirely appropriate. So I think I'm at least on the same page. I understood what Paul was saying would be what we're facing. At the same time, well, there's scheduling issues as Howard said. We need to figure out, you know, what's the budget for this going to be, or we can do it this year or next, et cetera. So there may be other reasons that it may take longer to actually get to that finish line. But at this point, I think, you know, moving into the more concrete engineering phase, as opposed to the committee talking about it and doing some very good work to pull together their best thoughts on it so that we can then give direction to the engineer as to what we want them to go study. That time for that transition is now.
Okay, thanks. Ed?
Thank you. I will reiterate that when we broke this out to subcommittee in March, and I shared emails with Howard and Jeremy on this particular thing that I outlined very specific goals that I'd hoped by this point would have got us very much further down this path. And I'm actually disappointed that we did not achieve more of that in the intervening time. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment time is over, but I think there are some hands up. Am I correct?
I think Jeremy would like to say something.
Jeremy, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's totally fine. I think for the record, at least from the staff perspective, I think that there's a different take on what was being recommended at the time from BPTS. Just to be candid, we didn't have anything to react to, and now we do. And I think that that's what we're moving forward on. The kind of work that Paul, what I'm hearing tonight, the kind of, and as I've understood, the kind of work that Paul needs to do can't happen until there's some form of a recommendation. That's occurred, and that's happened relatively quickly. So yeah, I understand the comments, but I have a different take on the order of things. And I think that's the information that I have and from where I participated. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Okay, I'm going to take these. Is it 3?
Yes.
Members?
Rita Comas.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. We seem to be having many studies going on around town. This particular issue, and Ed, I appreciate your presentation, and I've attended many of your meetings, and I avoid on the weekends or any holidays going down Portola Road there, because then I'm too busy looking for a cyclist, a horse, a car that's parked in the lane. All kinds of things are happening, people making U-turns. There's so much. And so it's great that if we have a traffic study and we put this off again, but during this time when the weather is beautiful and before hopefully it's going to pour down raining solid nonstop, but not flooding for us pretty soon, is there anything we can do? Because the residents have been asking for something, some type of relief, with COVID, and they said, go out and go walk. And then Foothill Park closed and people found Windy Hill and they just love it, and of course they're going to be coming back. Is there something we can do, temporary signage, to help us, the residents, at least safely drive through that area from now until the rains come? And then we can still have a parallel study going on if that is then approved. But the residents are clearly asking, and I know everyone's been asking and commenting every time Ed has a meeting, if there's some way to respond for the residents, to do something for us other than, we don't really see, I guess we kind of see monies that come from the tickets, but we'd rather have safety first for ourselves driving through there, for our kids to be able to cross the street. If there's something that can be done for us, it would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy, is your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Derwin. A suggestion here, to Rita's point, one direction the council could absolutely provide tonight is to do some temporary parking restrictions. That would be, I think, appropriate and within the power of the council. That I no longer have that authority as it relates to the COVID activities. That's what I was able to use last year when we had those initial issues. If the council directed me tonight to put in place, it's not going to look pretty and things will move around, I am sure, but we could certainly do something to see if that provided some relief. I don't want to complicate this, but if this is going to take a little bit of time, that could be direction.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Sharon?
Phone number 7562.
Good evening, this is Caroline Vertonghen again. Thank you. If we can go back to the history of the traffic study, the latest traffic study by consultant Krupka, I believe that the public saw that in August 2018, and we've made several adjustments because many of the suggestions were not only unsafe, but they were not respecting our scenic corridor. So even though Consultant Krupke has promised that he would abide by our governing documents, we have not seen that. And based on that, we have made several suggestions. The public has until now not seen any changes made to the original plan that was presented August 18. So on behalf of all the residents who are really burdened by this problem that we have addressed so many times, I hope that the council will take some temporary steps. It's not the residents that are causing the problems, it's people visiting our town. And so once they know what our ethics are and what our governing documents are, we will not need those signs. So thank you for listening to my comments. Thank you.
Jeremy? What?
I apologize. I left my hand up. I apologize.
Oh, that's not a new hand. Okay. All right. Sharon, is there another attendee who wants to speak?
Yes, Angela Hay.
All righty.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the nice comments on my presentation. You know, having been a consultant and knowing what it takes to write a proposal and the difference between writing a proposal and actually doing a study, is it possible tonight for the council to approve X dollars for Paul to come back with a study that shows the sort of scope of where he's going based on what we've given him, so that he can start the study already and do phase 1, and maybe you can approve 5K or something like that.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, one more and that's it. Sharon?
Yes, Dana.
Could the study please include looking at the Mid-Penn parking lot, which could accommodate with new striping another 20 cars? So, and I wonder at what point the council asked the planning commission to look at the CUP of Mid-Penn. And so it just seems sort of odd to me to move ahead without ever having taken this step. And so I hope you take this step, and I hope the study takes this step, and that we take a look at it. And maybe we have to move on to the other side of the Neely driveway, but it would be really great to get all of that parking off of Portola Road. And that has to do with Mid-Penn. And we should be including them and looking at that. Thank you.
Jeremy, that is a new hand.
That is a new hand. Yes. I think 2 comments. First, to Angela's suggestion, the council doesn't have in front of it that information in order to make that determination. But I have within my spending authority and some flexibility within the budget to do a variety of things. So I'm comfortable working with Paul and Howard to get moving now on this and bringing back then an amended budget that includes some monies for this process. If the council is comfortable with that, that will reduce any delays related to that. A second comment I would make is if it's the council's desire to see quicker action, although there may be some merit to having a longer term set of conversations around the parking lot at Windy Hill, delaying this will mean that there won't be restrictions for years. I think that's just the unfortunately the truth. So I thought I'd add that. Thank you.
Okay, back to the council. Yes, Craig.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
I would move that we ask staff to work on putting together a proposal for an engineering study, and then subsequently a design and implementation plan for addressing traffic and parking issues in this area, in these areas.
Second. Any discussion? So we're not going to include the ASCC in there or temporary signage or anything like that.
That would be part of the proposal if that I would hope staff would come back with is a timeline and when to go to ADCC and what the scope of it would be. But that
I
was what they bring
I
up.
think we could direct Jeremy right now to do temporary signage, if I heard him correctly.
I'm not in favor of temporary signage until we've had a study that tells us what we need to do.
Okay, all right. Okay, and you're still okay with that, Jeff?
I mean, the temporary signage seemed reasonable to me. I mean, I don't know. I want to know what all other people think. I was thinking the temporary signage seemed reasonable.
Ed?
Thank you. You bring up temporary signage. We do have a precedent for that in the first round in 2012 of having some experimental signage to help define the restricted area for parking along Portola Road.
Okay, do we want to step? Yes, Jeremy.
Sorry. One other thing. I mean, there might be an opportunity to parse some of this out. I mean, I think the council today could say paint the curb red. I just don't think that is a forgive me, I don't want to step anybody's toes, but I don't think that's a particularly complicated issue. Some of the signage issues might be a little more complicated, and as Craig has suggested in his motion, going through with the study. So if the council wants to spend a little more time on this tonight, we could go through this a little bit and see what the council's comfortable with doing now, as opposed to what the council's comfortable with in a study, in order to move on.
Now I'm confused.
Sorry.
I thought the study was going to be part of the proposal, that was just.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple different things that we're speaking to here. Paul is correct. There is a standard by which these things are determined. And that standard is applied to both simple projects and complicated projects. And you hear the term warrant. I mean, this is the kinds of things that get issued around this. And to go through the process that Paul's describing in order to have everything buttoned up and formal and, dot your I's and cross your T's, that's the way to go. The council can also direct us tonight to do it anyway. Without that initial stuff. I'm not suggesting that happened. What I'm suggesting is that there may be portions of this that are reasonable to go ahead and say, go for. That would potentially provide some relief. I mean, to one of the things that Ed is saying tonight that I completely agree with, it's the notion that, I think we've talked about some of the red parking opportunities, red stripe parking along Willowbrook. I don't think that's in my opinion, that's a significant issue. And I don't want to make this any more complicated, but there's, I think that there's a little bit of tension between wanting to get this going in order to address the residents' issues. And this is typical, right? I mean, the government takes longer than anybody wants. And also try to do this as above board and formally as possible. So I'm trying to find a way to find if there's a happy medium in there. If there's not, that's fine. I just thought it might be worth some additional conversation.
Craig.
I think my motion maybe allows for exactly what Jeremy is suggesting. My motion is to request that staff come back with a proposal, and I'm hoping that staff will exercise some judgment in that proposal in determining what level of study is needed to support whatever changes staff feels are appropriate to implement. And so if there are things that can be done without a huge amount of study, and could just move straight to a design and implementation phase, that would be part of the proposal. And I hope that staff has enough information from BPTS and the extensive comment and just being able to go out there on a Saturday and look at what's going on to be able to make those kinds of judgments and bring us back a proposal that includes judgment.
Okay, Jeff, are you still comfortable with seconding?
Yes. One question is, Jeremy, Howard, are we giving you clear enough guidance at this point?
I believe so. I believe that the recommendation by Craig and seconded by you, or motion, excuse me, provides us with that ability to move forward. Howard is correct in saying that there are number of tasks that are underway that are by virtue of them being underway or otherwise have taken priority, if you will. There's also a question about when we can schedule this for ASCC. This is not going to be as simple as putting it on the agenda in 2 weeks. It'll be something else. I believe the direction is clear. I believe that the council's direction is also get this going as quickly as possible within the confines of what we've discussed. And I do believe that Howard and I have appropriate direction on being able to take some interim measures as part of the larger plan that feel appropriate. Is that fair, Craig? Do I have that down? Okay.
Is an interim measure temporary signage?
Well, maybe let me amend that a little bit. I don't hear the council saying put out temporary signage, but I do hear the council saying that we have some authority and judgment to look at some of the some aspects of this and do some implementation. That could potentially include some red curb painting and the like right now. Is that fair, Craig, Jeff?
Yes.
I think the signage is just simply more complicated, and it has a, I think as Dan is speaking to, it has a relationship to the character of the community. And I think that's why the council wanted to take this to ASCC. So I would not be comfortable within my own authority putting out signs, which I don't do.
Okay.
Thanks.
Right, there's a motion and there's a second. Sharon, roll call.
Councilmember Alves,
Aye.
Councilmember Warnikoff,
Aye.
Councilmember Richards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hughes.
Aye.
Mayor Derwin.
Aye. And Jeremy, can you look into the CUP, mid-pen CUP and the parking situation? And see if there's any leverage there.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. This is not council direction, but these are issues that we've looked at in the past.
I mean, does anybody else feel that way? Am I the only one?
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. I don't have the backstory on that, so
Yeah, it makes sense to me. My recollection is I did look at the CUP when this has come up in the past, and it's kind of toothless and really we're largely dependent on the goodwill of Mid-Penn and their desire to do something. And so it's really more of a political question than a enforcement or, anything to do with the CUP. But I'd be happy for staff to look at the CUP again and just confirm my recollection on that.
I agree with that.
Right. Okay. Is that enough for staff? Are we good?
Yeah, thank you very much. Very thorough. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Howard. Thanks, Ed.
Paul, thanks, Howard. Good seeing you guys.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah,
Thank you, Angela. I love the little emblem at the bottom of your presentation. It's really cute.
All right. Item number 11, the last item on our regular agenda, is a recommendation by the Finance Director for fiscal year 2021-22 budget, September revision. So we don't have a May revise, we have a Sept revise.
September revision. Yeah, we'll turn it over to Cindy. Cindy, it's all yours.
Okay, let me begin to share my screen. So I hope you can all see that.
Yes.
Perfect. Good evening, Mayor Derwin, members of the council and public. Tonight, we are here to present the September revision of the fiscal year 2021-2022 annual budget. Tonight, we will be reviewing the revisions made to the proposed fiscal year 2021-2022 budget that was adopted in June. We will also be taking a look at prior year actuals and future projections in our 5-year revenue and expenditure forecast. At the end, we will be happy to take any questions or comments. The foundation to the budget has not changed, with a continued relationship to council priorities. When the proposed budget was adopted in June, we had not yet received the federal funds from the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. We received the first of 2 payments on July 15th in the amount of $564,381. We expect to receive the second payment about the same time next year. A new fund, Fund 225, has been created to track both the revenues and expenditures related to the new Fund 225. Staff reviewed the criteria of items that were eligible under the ARPA funds and compared that to expenditures funded by the general fund in both the operational and CIP budgets, and determined that a few items met the criteria. The revised budget remains a balanced operational budget, increasing the operational surplus to $103,536 in comparison to the surplus in June of $83,288. The surplus reduces the impact to fund balance. In this view here, we have a summary of both sources and requirements for all funds. On the left, we have all sources with total revenues of over 9 million, as well as the use of fund balance and operating transfers for a total of over 10.7 million. On the right, we have our requirements for all funds with a total gross appropriations of 8.1 million, with total operating transfers of 2.5 for total requirements of all funds in the amount of 10,744,831. And in our next slide here, we have a similar view, but this is pared down to our general fund. In this view, our sources and requirements is similar to the previous slide, with total revenues of 6.2 million and the use of fund balance of 793,544 for total sources of 7,008,648. On the requirement side, we have gross appropriations of 6.1 million plus operating transfers out of $897,080. The net operating surplus of $103,536 reduces the net impact of fund balance. Most revisions to the September budget were due to the addition of revenue received from the federal ARPA funds, as well as the offsetting eligible expenditures. Additional changes to revenue include increases to the property tax revenue by 15,000 for an overall growth of 5.6%. Although this projection is higher than previous growth, staff has continued to take a conservative approach as revenue from property tax could run as high as over 6%. We also included an increase in excess ERAF. That's the Educational Revenue Augmentation Fund, due to reserves that were released higher than previously anticipated by about 37,000. Changes to expenditures include allocations of ARPA funds to budgeted items that were previously funded by the general fund. Other changes to general fund items include increases to premiums for our property and liability insurance, which in June, in the June budget, only estimates were included. At that time, we did not know the full premium. Changes to expenditures in the capital improvement program include ARPA funding for projects such as improvements to the ventilation system in Town Hall, as well as upgrades in the schoolhouse for virtual or hybrid meeting capabilities. A full list of budget revisions can be found in the staff report. In this upcoming slides, we're going to be looking at issues to monitor and consider longer term. Previous ongoing discussions and other factors related to the growth of expenditures outpacing revenues led to an exercise of forecasting for projected revenues and expenditures out to fiscal year 2026. For the first time, staff presents the 5-year forecast for the town's operational, general fund revenues and expenditures. In this slide here, we have our 5-year forecast for our revenues, also looking at previous year actuals. For the first time, staff examined every revenue and expenditure line for the last 3 years of actuals to examine and determine appropriate assumptions. For most line items, assumptions were based on trend lines of previous change in those areas, as well as understanding of impacts in future years. For the town's most significant revenue source, unsecured property taxes, staff assumed an annual growth rate of 5%. While higher annual growth rates have been achieved, setting the future growth at this level matches the town's tradition of conservatively estimating future revenue sources. Revenues associated with ERAF remain flat, as the future of this source derived from basic aid school district excess revenues remains uncertain due to state changes and changes to the number of school districts that remain basic aid. In our next slide here, we have our expenditures. The Sheriff's Office contract growth is at a significant rate and is anticipated to do so in the next contract that will be negotiated for the fiscal year 2023-24 years. Staff salaries are held at an annual 3% growth rate, but does not include merit increases or changes in staffing that may either grow or reduce the overall staff budget. Year 5 of this forecast shows an operational general fund deficit. However, estimating the town's revenues and expenditures in out years is quite difficult, and this forecast did not estimate certain revenue increases that could be reasonably assumed to occur, including in sales tax, ERAF, and other sources. Staff chose to present this forecast as is to demonstrate the continued challenges in this budgetary process related to operational budget surpluses. Per previous town council direction, revenue enhancements may be necessary to ensure continued support for core programming, emergency preparedness, and other important projects. As with previous years, the delta between operational general fund revenue and expenditures is shrinking. While there are one-time expenditures within this proposed budget that will not be included in future years, staff expects this trend to continue. The use of reserves is not recommended for operational needs, particularly on an ongoing basis. This concludes my presentation at this time. So I would like to open this up for any questions or comments.
Cindy, could you stop the share, please?
Yes.
Thank you. And just to add a little bit of color, thank you, Cindy, for your great presentation. And in particular, as it relates to the forecasting, as Cindy said, this is the first time that we've done this. And Cindy's got an incredible spreadsheet where we went through every line item and came up with potential assumptions about where things are going. For most of them, they were based on prior years averages or our sense of where things are, what direction things are going to go in. As Cindy said, there are just certain things, particularly after year 3, it starts to get pretty dicey in what we're projecting. And that's why we actually felt pretty comfortable coming forward on a year 5 that showed the deficit. We don't believe that's actually going to be the case, but it speaks to the challenges associated with having assumptions and being smart about them and being comfortable with what they show at times. We certainly want to hear from you tonight on this forecast. If there's a primary, obviously we'd like you to adopt a budget as well. But if there's one element related to the staff's presentation, we want to hear more from you about what you think, how you'd like us to approach this in the future, the Finance Committee's role, which we believe to be extensive as it relates to future iterations of this. So again, thank you, Cindy. We're very proud of this budget. We're proud of its look, feel, content, what it can do for this council and the community, and tell people about what the council's priorities are and how the monies are being spent. And we hope you feel the same way. Thank you.
All right. Do my colleagues have questions? And I do want to remind you that the vice mayor sent a colleagues memo out shortly before the meeting, I think. Didn't it come late in the day? And it is fascinating. So,
Did you want to do that at all? Did you want to say anything? I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to cut you off. I saw your hand come up.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I think the memo speaks for itself, but if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. For those in the public who may not have seen it, is available on the town's website, and I'll link it in the chat in just a second. But what I did is I took numbers from the budget and created a visualization of them that allows you to kind of see the big picture of where do we get our money from, where do we spend our money, what is the relative size of things. And it's something that presented visually, you can get a better sense of overall what's going on than you can go into in the actual budget book for the fine detail of everything. So it's a view that has helped me understand it, and especially as we're looking at long-term projections, and we've had discussions in the past about road maintenance or ERAF changes and all these things, and it just gives me a helpful guide for understanding how big of an issue is this relative to our overall budget. So that was kind of the goal for this, and it doesn't so much show changes from one budget to the next. I'm working on some other ways of visualizing that to help me understand changes from one budget to the next, but hopefully it's helpful for the rest of you as well.
One of the things that, if I can add to Craig's commentary there, that is fascinating about a visual exercise is the one that Craig put together. I think it lends itself to the conversation around what how the general fund is used, and general fund is general fund, right? It sits in a pot. It can go different places, and the council does not. I can't think of an example off the top of my head right now. Say that a particular funding source that we receive needs to go to a particular need. For instance, you could have certain planning fees that come in that would be associated with some exercise or some cost in a very specific way. I would rarely recommend that the council do that, because it does restrict your ability to, I think, make smarter budget decisions. But this is, I thought, a wonderful way to visualize how these things sort of flow. Thanks for putting it together, Craig.
Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Craig. I think that visualization is super helpful, and it's probably going to take a little while for people to get used to it, but it's a great kind of 30,000 foot look at the ins and outs. So I think it's super helpful. I just want to say that, of course, the forecast is a forecast, but I think it's fantastic that we now have it, because it just kind of keeps everybody thinking about what's coming. It's kind of like just a placeholder out there for all of us to be thinking about, what's coming and what we need to think about that's going to make things tighter over time. One that I'm particularly concerned about that isn't represented in the forecast is the potential need for more headcount. We've talked many times about the increase in workload in town for a variety of reasons, and so just everybody keep in mind that headcount is assumed flat right now in that forecast, and so that's one area, going into next year, or even maybe potentially partially through this year, where, it may be important to make some changes. And if that's the case, then the next question becomes, where do we get the incremental revenue? And so I just think these are things that we need to be thinking about now versus later after we're in a pinch. And so, in the finance committee meetings, that's been one thing that I've been talking about, is really trying to be realistic, thinking ahead, so we don't get to the point where we're kind of behind the 8 ball, that we're more proactive about making sure we have the revenue we need to cover our expenses. But thanks all. I think it's a great budget.
If this is helpful or useful or otherwise, Sarah is just spot on her analysis of potential future need on the headcount side. It also, I think Cindy said this, it also assumes we didn't make assumptions about some other elements related to current staffing, other than to program in an average 3% increase across the board, which could in any given year be just from a COLA. The council's been giving excellent direction on these issues in the last few years, particularly this last year, as this issue's been elevated. Our hope is to continue to check in with you as we identify potential future need outside of the normal budget process, and just be very clear as we start to see trends or issues or need that we come forward to you and talk about that. Thanks.
Okay, other questions? Yes, Jeff.
Really more comments. I just want to acknowledge the tremendous amount of work that went into both of these documents, the forecast line by line, and then Craig's document. I imagine those both took, I know they both took a tremendous amount of work. Unless Craig has some way of automating it that I'm not aware of. I just gathering everything. I think, Jeremy has been talking about forecasting and wanting to improve our forecast capabilities for a long time now. And I'm glad to see that so many other things get in the way, as they always do, but I'm glad to see we finally have this tool, because it's, we've had a sense for a long time that revenues we're not going to keep pace with expenditures at some point. Now we actually have a way of actually trying to figure out planning for that or preparing for when that happens. So I don't have any questions, just to thank you, and to just, obviously we will be diving into this and looking at it increasingly and relying on it in the future. So thank you for having these both for us to use now.
Okay. Are there any people from the public who would like to speak or ask?
Hello, can I make a comment first?
Oh, I'm sorry, John.
I'll make a comment. I'm here. Yeah, I'm happy to see the forecast effort made, and I think it's the good news about staffing is that we've made some changes recently that we don't know what the effect's going to be yet. That could have pretty dramatic effect on their ability to at least catch up with what's been falling behind. And I think over the last few years, there have been a number of comments about the fact that policing and road maintenance and all those have really shot up, and it look a little bit ominous as we put the budget together every year. So I'm glad that we have this now, this tool to work with. Yeah, it looks great. I don't have any questions really. A great job by Cindy and the whole staff. But and I really did like your chart, Craig, even though you automated it. It's okay. It's great. Thanks so much for doing that.
Yeah, I was going to tease a little bit. We didn't automate our stuff so much. Craig probably did that in 10 minutes.
Craig's robot did it. Are there any other questions before we go to the public? Okay, Sharon, I think there's a few people who would like to talk to us, correct?
Yes. Rita Comas.
All righty.
Hi, good evening. I repeat the questions that I asked at the finance meeting, but one of the answers that I did receive at the finance meeting was to go to is it open.gov, Jeremy? I can't remember now, but what was told to me, I then tried to tear back some of the numbers by going to that and was told that it was open, but perhaps I need a different link because I got to a point where I needed a password and could not get past that. So if there is something that we could place on the website along with budget information, so the public can then go follow it themselves rather than bother the office to try and get that information, the secret code, the one eye closed on stand on one foot. Appreciate it. And so if that could be posted someplace rather than us bothering the staff, that would be great.
Is this from Jim Sacco in the chat? Is this answering Rita?
That's from Craig in the
No,
chat.
Yes,
Jim.
that's the link that.
Yeah.
I don't see one from
Provided
Rita.
the link, it wasn't me though.
The link that I sent Rita should be the
Should
link
work.
from Doc. Yeah.
And Rita may be speaking in part to hit mute on myself. Rita was speaking and may be speaking in part to an additional capability that Cindy and I are going to be putting up throughout this month, which is some additional opportunities for folks to go into the budget. There's some preloaded things that we believe people will be interested in. So for instance, fire safety, police safety, where people can click into that and see reports as we see them. And then there's other areas where people can have certainly more independence in playing with numbers and the like. So there's more to come. But the link that is in the staff report and that was just put up should do much of what you're describing.
Okay, Rita, if it doesn't work, let us know, okay? Is there another person who would like to speak, Sharon?
Yes, Caroline Vertonghen.
All right.
Good evening. Thank you for listening to my comments. So yes, myself, just like Rita, I attended the Finance Committee meeting. And I was personally a little disappointed. First of all, that the chair was not there. And that again, several questions that were supposed to be answered in the last meeting in June and promised that we would get more clarification again, were not presented. So my comments during that meeting was that the pie charts seem to be off compared to other years. And if, for instance, we have a tax increase, which we all feel and can see in the numbers, but then the pie charts show a decrease. The answer that I was given was that the ERA funds are complicated, and those are the funds that offset that amount. So now again, you saw the budget and the ERA funds are projected, but the way I understood it, there is no guarantee. And so hopefully the committee can confirm that. Mr. Cardinal also made a point, and which we all have done, is that the increases of the sheriff are, well, I guess we should have a discussion about that, because how can you just do an automatic increase without seeing any accountability for the services that they provide? And then I think it was Mr. Levine who pointed out that in previous years, there was always a 5-year capital improvement plan. So there were some kind of projections, and at the presentation, it seemed like it was not included in the budget. I believe he asked Mr. Dennis to see why that was, and I don't think we got a clear answer. So if Mr. Dennis can clarify that, that would be great. Thank you for taking my comments.
Mayor, would you like me to?
It's up to you, Jeremy.
Yeah, I'm happy to. The chair had a personal emergency, so she was unable to attend. The issue that Mr. Cardinal brought up was related to the process by which the budget's been developed for the sheriff's office in the past. And Dave's primary point was in the future, should there be a conversation related to what kind of service we want instead of the current levels? You have that broader conversation. The Mr. Levine's or Ken's comments were, should the 5-year CIP be included in the operational budget general fund forecast? We had a discussion about it. My suggestion was that wasn't necessarily useful. The 5-year is in the budget section 3, and it's been there in multiple iterations of the budget. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Craig?
Rita was saying in chat that she may be having trouble seeing the message that I sent in chat. So Rita, if you didn't manage to get the link, it's on page 1, red page 114 of the council agenda packet at the bottom of the page. You can just click it there.
And Rita may be speaking to, I don't want to put words in Rita's mouth at all. The format right now, it gets to a certain level and there's nothing to click into beyond that. There's no subcategories or the like. So the additional, and this is a budget presentation for a particular budget year. This isn't necessarily intended to do some of the things that Rita is talking about, and that's what Cindy and I are working on right now, to have some of that additional capability.
Okay. I don't see any more hands. Am I correct, Sharon?
Correct.
Okay, bringing it back to the council. First of all, do we need to take action on this? Do we need to, do I need a motion to set a public hearing, Cara? I can't remember.
I think you're approving the amended budget. Let me just verify.
We are setting a public hearing.
Oh, okay. So yes, we can have a vote on that then.
Okay, first of all, do people have comments beyond what you've already commented? Yes, Craig?
Yes, I didn't comment during question time, so I'll comment now. I think this is a great budget, and we continue to improve the presentation and the information content, I think, in our budgets. And Cindy, I commend you on doing a great job both in pulling the budget together and incorporating the number of changes and feedback that came at the Finance Committee. It's improved a lot since then. You've clearly put a lot of work in just in the last week or two to really put the finishing polish on this, and it really shows. I have dug into this budget deeply. Drawing the chart was pretty easy, but getting the numbers to go into the chart involved deep perusal of what was going on in the budget book. And so, I've poked around in all of the corners and really understand how you put it together, Cindy, and I think it's a great piece of work. The 5-year projection, I think, like any projection, it's going to be more right in the earlier years and less right in the years that are further out. But what it lets us do is see, okay, if we had another staff member and we were paying $200,000 a year for that, including salary and benefits and a new desk and a computer and whatever else we need to pay, how does that change things? What does that look like as other costs are going up and going down? And so, it lets us say next year, okay, what does the 5-year projection look like? And it may be that in year 4 next year, we don't, even though, not much has really changed, that it's no longer negative, it's now slightly positive. My sense from the 5-year projection is that, some years are a little up, some years are a little down. There may be a little bit of a trend towards higher expenditures and lower revenues, but it's not really, the numbers aren't big enough to really convince me of that. It's within the margin of error if you look at slightly different assumptions in the detail. Cindy was nice enough to share with me the detailed spreadsheet, and so I played around with that. And if you have slightly higher or lower CPI, or some of the other assumptions change by less than 1% here, or slightly more than 1% there, it changes the bottom line number just as much as the trend over the 5 years. So my basic takeaway from the 5-year projection is things are looking relatively flattish. We're probably going to not have too much trouble balancing our budget for the coming 5 years, unless we change something in a big way. But if we do, we now have a tool that allows us to balance that and figure out how to do it the right way. Effort, I think that's well worth it to allow us to have that planning tool. And I think it's a great product.
Thanks. Does anyone else have a comment? Jeff?
Oh, I was just, I was going to move to approve their budget revision and set the agenda. I mean, set the public hearing, but I did not have any other comments, but other than my previous ones, which are that this all looks great. And, you know, yeah, forecasts are hard, especially about the future, but now we actually have something to say, all these questions about what if, and think about what those expanding, what adding employees, if we need to get there, does to our budget, and what, you know, if if house prices keep going up the way they have been, what that does to our revenue. I think there's a lot of uncertainties, so it's just good to be able to manage them now. Thank you.
Okay, so did you make a motion?
I did.
Would someone like to second that motion? Sarah?
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, roll call, please, Sharon.
Councilmember Alves,
Aye.
Councilmember Hornikoff,
Aye.
Councilmember Richards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hughes,
Aye.
Mayor Derwin.
Okay, I can't really heap any more praise onto you guys because you have so much now that you're getting weighted down by it.
Keep it coming. Keep it coming.
All I can say is thank you for the crystal ball.
Thank you very much.
The next item is Council, Liaison, Committee, and Regional Agency reports. And since I have been neglecting John, I'm going to call him down first.
Perfect. I have none. I was gone.
That's what we all like.
Yep.
Okay, how about Sarah?
All right. I don't know I'm curious if any council members were able to attend the summer concert on the 26th. I was not, but I did hear great things about it. I'm sorry if I didn't mention, this is my CAC update. Otherwise, other than that, they've just been continuing to prep for Live Revive on October 9th. And then there was a little bit of new business discussed in the last meeting, the potential for adding a classical music series. I think details are still being worked out, but everybody was excited about that idea. That would be happening more towards the end of next year. The other update we had, or committee that met, was the housing element agenda planning subcommittee. I don't think we quite have a name for it yet, but we're meeting, once a month in between the meetings, just to kind of work on agenda items. And we had a good discussion last week about that and planning for the next housing element committee meeting, which I believe is on the 20th. Those are on the third Monday of every month. So I welcome the public to join those meetings, to look out for them. We had the finance subcommittee meeting, but we just covered all that, so I don't need to add anything there. Sorry, my family I'm on this group text and I don't know how to turn it off. Let's see if that works. Sequoias. Let's see, I have a standing meeting with Rob Hayes. There's really not a lot of new going on there related to the housing element. I know one thing that they are doing as an affiliate partner is their next step is looking at a seismic study. I don't know if they have the date quite yet, but that's their next step in thinking about their master planning. And we do have a meeting on the calendar, I believe, for Jeremy and I to meet with the members of the Sequoias over Zoom in October, just to kind of talk about town issues in general. Rest of the agenda for that TBD. And then the last is just PBSD. Construction's going well. And I think COVID wise, the school's doing a very good job. They're testing weekly for those who are interested in testing and willing to test. They're continuing to follow up about the vaccination rates and encouraging, vaccinations. I know they had, I think you guys, Jeremy, you might know the numbers better, but pretty good showing at the last vaccination event that was done in conjunction with the town. And so generally, it sounds like the school's feeling pretty good about the start of the year. And I think that's it for my committee updates.
Thanks, Sarah. How about?
Looks like John's raising his hand.
Oh,
I raised both hands. Just to mention, I think Sarah, you were also at the MROSD meeting so I forgot about that one, but, regarding Hawthorne's.
Yeah, why don't you give that update since you didn't get to give any?
If I remember correctly, long ago. They talked about their plan for creating a focus group to decide how to approach it. And essentially it seems like I've heard the same message so many times, and now we're waiting till the end of next year before I believe they think they'll have the focus group ready to go to start to lay out the planning for trails and access and parking and that sort of thing. So it's a very, very slow process. And that seems to be the way they do it. But I don't think we can expect too much from them for a while. They did mention the Alpine Hill Road Trail, which is, we were talking to them about this for now, I think 10 years about. So
easily.
Anyway, there was some public participation and they are getting on it. And I think hopefully at some point we'll have a new representative from.
Well, there's an election next year.
Yeah. That was that.
Okay, what about Jeff?
Okay. The first ad hoc housing element committee meeting took place after our last council meeting because of the cancellation. So Sarah and I were on that. I think it went fairly smoothly. Sarah, feel free to weigh in if you've got any thoughts about that meeting. But we spent a little bit of time kind of everyone introducing themselves, and we elected a chair who is Jocelyn Swisher and a vice chair, which is Al Sill. We talked a little bit about kind of just the general background, and I think those first few meetings are going to be a lot of kind of downloading of information so that everyone kind of knows where they're starting from in terms of what we're doing or the task in front of us. A lot of this talk came back to I think what we're working on now is going to be sort of this kind of just making sure that the committee is sort of in agreement in terms of what everyone sort of agrees the process is and what our values are in terms of as the group. And so I'm trying to make sure that as disagreements arise, we can sort of come back to what we've all agreed are sort of the starting points for what we're doing and sort of the kind of what the finished product's supposed to look like and what we're really trying to reflect. So I thought it was a very productive meeting. I'm just looking through my notes. I actually, unfortunately, missed the Wildfire Committee. I had a conflict last month. I don't know if anyone else attended that. ASCC was canceled on the 23rd, I believe. And let's see, I've got Parks and Rec and Nature and Science both meet tomorrow. So that's all I have at the moment.
Sounds good. And then, did you do it yet, Craig? I can't even remember.
I didn't, but my committees are very easy. One was BPTS, and that was agenda item number 10. And then the other one was the Finance Committee, and that was agenda item number 11. So we've already covered mine.
There you go. Thank you. All right, I have a stack of them, but I will just give highlights.
Oh, sorry, Marion, just before, there was actually one other thing at the BPTS that is ongoing, which is prep for ZOTS to TOTS and coordinating with the Sheriff's Department for partial or full road closure for the duration of the ZOTS to TOTS race. And Jeremy's been coordinating with our new police lieutenant or lieutenant, I think.
He is a captain.
Captain.
And what's the name
help
again?
coordinate
Say his name again, Jeremy.
Andrew Armando.
Andrew Armando. Okay.
So anyway, working with the sheriff's office to get, I don't know what you call it, a surge in sheriff's office folks to help with, traffic flow and telling people to please just not come down that section of road for the hour that the kids are running. And working with Ed and the BPTS and to get some volunteers from the public to help with that as well, to minimize how much we need to get sheriff's office folks to be out there getting paid overtime. So that's ongoing and seems to be heading in the right direction, I think, Jeremy. But if anybody wants to do any outreach to people that they know who want to stand there directing people how to not run over the kids for the hour of the race, more volunteers the merrier, and refer them to probably Ed at BPTS. I think will be coordinating, collecting volunteers.
Is that it?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. The 101 Express Lanes Jpa. We talked about the opening, excuse me, planning for the opening of the southern section, the public education and marketing piece. I mean, it's kind of amazing that this is really going to happen. I believe late December. It's gotten pushed a bit because what's holding it up is the toll system, testing and coordinating with the VTA, because south of our express lanes are the Santa Clara County express lanes, so they'll all open at the same time. And I think this has taken less time than the Willowbrook, et cetera, parking stuff. This has taken less time. Express lanes on the 101. Let's see. And then we had a very, very long closed session with no reportable action. There was a Resource Management Climate Protection Committee meeting. We talked about how we're integrating equity into our programs. And that was actually a good discussion because one of our members is Hortensia, gosh, I can't remember her last name, but she's with El Concilio, Hortensia Lopez. So she has very good suggestions for us, and she's living it. And the other thing that was really interesting, and I kind of wanted to talk offline with whoever knows about this technology, would be either Jeff or Craig or both. The integration of hydrogen as building power, as building power backup in energy management. Darren Painter from Plug Power, do you know him? No? Anyway,
I know the name, but yeah, I can talk to you about it.
It was fascinating. And then I was talking to someone about it and he said, oh, are you kidding? That's years away. Is that true? Hydrogen?
Hydrogen's complicated. It's complicated.
Well, this guy makes it seem like the answer.
They all do.
Do they? It was, I found it really engaging and interesting. Okay, then there was a presentation on addressing water quality and design when promoting residential gray water systems. And the presenter was somebody who, if you know about gray water, you would have heard of her. What's her name? Laura Allen from Gray Water Action. And basically she was talking about how you really can save a lot of water doing a gray water system, even if it's just a laundry to landscape. Obviously, this is not potable water. You're using it for landscape, but we're trying to encourage more people to start thinking in that direction because of the drought, especially since the county is much more open to it. When Shoreline or Fizzler met, and We discussed the San Mateo County Grand Jury Report titled San Mateo County, California's Ground Zero for Sea Level Rise, and gave responses. We approved an updated procurement and contracting policy. And then we discussed the creation of objectives and standards of the district and cities related to sea level rise for new development along and near the shoreline. And that was the more interesting thing because we're talking about trying to have, more nature solutions rather than what do you call it, gray infrastructure versus green infrastructure. And connecting all the shoreline and what has been done in let's see, it's Burlingame. Yeah, Burlingame's working on their shoreline plan, trying to get them all connected. Redwood City is working on their South San Francisco. And what else did we talk about? Let me look. Okay. That was pretty much it. I was at a library meeting this week. It was a little committee, library strategic meeting. It's kind of a for me, it's babysitting because there were a few members of the board who were uncomfortable with some practices. And so we had to do this whole subcommittee thing and kind of walk them through it. And I think we have to do one more meeting and it'll be over, but it had to do with doing more outreach to understand the needs of certain libraries. Basically, the staff was already going to do all this, but we had to appease a few board members. So we've been doing this committee. There were some really good quotes though by a council member from Woodside that I'd be happy to share offline. And then what else? I did a call with the Sequoias, which is always kind of wacky and wonderful. So entertaining and fun. I'm trying to remember bird feeders. Bird feeders was one of the subjects. I don't know, just funny. And I think that's it. I did
I thought there might be a code in town that didn't allow bird feeders.
Yeah.
Bird feeders. Yeah.
There's an issue at the Sequoias with the bird feeders. I did attend the Housing Element Committee. It was excellent, extremely well run, as usual, great agenda. The staff did a great job. Everybody was on their greatest behavior. So it was a nice start. And then I did my video with the rabbi and his wife. So that was that. Jeremy, town manager report.
Thank you. I apologize. Mine is a bit extensive because we haven't met in a month. And this isn't necessarily in any particular order. First, I wanted to make a comment about the recruitment for the assistant town manager position. The initial recruitment phase is over. Interviews are taking place. And I suspect there'll be a second round of interviews next week, but been delighted with the pool and the conversation so far. Mentioned earlier that we do have a new captain in town, Andrew Armando. He comes from the transit side of the sheriff's office. I had the pleasure of lunch with him on, gosh, that was just yesterday. And had a variety of conversations around town issues. That included opportunities to bring bicycle deputies into town, particularly on the weekends. We had a nice conversation about the difference between the sheriff office provision during the week and the weekends. There are different types of services, and I think we've been traditionally more focused on the former than the latter. And he seemed very open to finding ways to increase visitor services related activities. And under Christina Corpus and Mark Myers, I think there's also been some of that focus, I think, particularly in the parking citations, which has been great. Mentioned the August 24th Hawthorne's meeting, so I don't have additional information to share. Stanford held tours of the Wedge site last week, pretty well attended, including staff, elected and appointed officials. I think they had about 100 people come out. I walked around with one of the planning commissioners and a few other folks, and found it to be useful for those who weren't familiar with the project. Had lunch with Rob Hayes last week. It's actually the first time I met him in person, so that was really nice. He's the, as Sarah said, the executive director of the Sequoias. I have to say, it's the strongest relationship I've seen between staff and their staff and the council and and the like. It's so strong. It's never been a bad one, but it's been fantastic. Sarah, thanks for what you're doing there. Had lunch with the county manager, Mike Callaghan, a couple weeks ago. Had a variety of conversations around wildfire issues that we share, and found that to be pretty helpful. The county continues to think of ways to elevate that conversation at their end. So I'm hoping to hear more from them that I can relate to the council in the near future. A reminder of something that we had in previous updates to the community, the letter that was sent by Vice Mayor Hughes and Councilmember Richards to the head of Housing and Community Development, the Department of Insurance at CAL FIRE. If anybody hasn't seen that letter, it's on our website. This was a request to have a longer term conversation around the nexus of issues between wildfire insurance and housing, wildfire, and insurance. It is our sense that those three agencies are not communicating with one another around the issues that we face in town, and we're looking forward to helping them with a trialogue. Is that a word? It's not a dialogue when it's two people, so more than that.
The cacophony.
Cacophony.
We want to talk too, so it's a quadrilogue or
yeah, we want to be involved too. To a point Craig made earlier, for the first time in a long time, we're really hoping to close the entire street for Zots to Tots. And actually, yesterday and today, as I was having conversations with the sheriff, it's a pretty considerable resource allocation for the sheriff's department to do that kind of road closure. But we think a mix of volunteers and some of the reservists will make some sense. So we're working very hard to make that a reality. And frankly, I think that just going to bring out more people to participate because it's a safer event. So we're really pretty delighted about that. Wildfire Committee, it was a good conversation. It was candidly, there was some difference of opinion amongst folks related to one of the presentations. Michael Tomars, who's the chair, and I had been having conversations with a business called All Risk Shield. It's actually gotten some notoriety in recent days because they participated in the Caldor fire activities. We invited them to come to just talk about what they do, because one of the things that we're working on is potentially recommending to council a purchase of assessments from a firm through an RFP process that people can take advantage of as a way to jumpstart individual residents' home hardening and defensible space efforts. Some folks enjoyed the presentation, learned some things. Some folks thought it was more of a sales effort. I understood that. I'm having conversations with other similar businesses to understand what they could potentially offer to the town through a similar process. So hopefully there'll be more to report there. I do plan on having lunch with Sheriff Bolanos. We had to reschedule our lunch that was scheduled for last 2 weeks ago. We took a number of staff took a field trip to Woodside to try out their hybrid system for meetings. So this would be an opportunity for people to participate both remotely and in chambers. It's got a few bugs still, but overall it's a great system. So it was really good for us to sit around for an hour and practice it and see how it worked. And we're really excited about bringing it forward. I understand there's quite a back order for some of the stuff that they use. They're the only shop in town. So I think at a future meeting, sooner than later, the council should discuss some of the issues around whether or not we're going back in the chambers at some point, or allowing committees to start meeting again. I think the time is going to be ripe again in a couple of weeks to talk about that. This Friday, I'm having lunch with the city manager of Palo Alto. One of the issues on my agenda is to talk about fire resiliency efforts in their lands adjacent to the town, particularly Foothills Park, and just want to get a sense of what's going on there. The town website has good information about what some of our other partners are doing around us, and Mid-Penn and others. And I'd like to add, if they're doing work, some of that to the website so people can see that. I'm also meeting with the director of WPB Ready, Selena, next week. We are between WPB Ready, the Sheriff's Office, County Office of Emergency Services, Zone Haven, and the Woodside Fire Protection District, of which WPB Ready has a relationship, working on a potential mailer to all residents, modeled off of one that came out of South Marin fire, that would provide information about evacuations and the like. They had an excellent 2-pager that has a map and has some information that I've adopted with their permission. So we've been working on it a little while. Selena's proofing it and making sure that it has an alignment with WPB Ready issues. So something that we hope to do. The final thing I have on my list is we are in the very final stages of updating a Stanford Wedge project page with an FAQ section. It is a very detailed document. Includes a couple different components, different components. One is general questions that we believe people have about the project. A section called "Did I Hear That Right?" Which is questions that we've heard discussed in the community with answers, and also questions that came from commissioners in the January meetings that they had. Some of those are pretty specific. As I said, very extensive. So I hope to have that up no later than this Monday. And I think we're pretty close to having that up. I think it will be incredibly helpful for the community at large, and have a place to read factual information about the project. As with all, and this happens in every community, there's some disinformation, there's some misunderstandings, and this would be a very easy place to refer to and say, look at question 12 and the like. So that's coming soon.
Are you going to number them?
Yeah, we're going to number them.
Good, because that way we can just say 37.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Craig.
You see Craig's raising his hand.
Yeah, I have a question just on the multi-AV telepresence council chambers thing. That's also connected to a memo that Cara sent out, I think it was earlier today. If this bill doesn't pass that Cara had mentioned in her memo, do we need to be in person for our first council meeting in October?
I'll let Cara answer that.
Yep, thank you. We do, unless the governor issues an executive order. I would think that if he's inclined to extend it, he would just sign the bill. But you know, I don't.
I mean, we don't know, but we might, just in case, be prepared to be back there.
Yes.
Beginning of October.
Yes.
Yeah, every city's struggling. So a couple cities have gone back. Most cities haven't. You know, one of the approach that we've had is that you know, waiting on what the governor's going to do, and also anticipating that, you know, anything that we do that involves the building, there's going to be a desire, rightly so, to continue some sort of hybrid model. and there'll be different risk tolerances and all that. And unfortunately, there just might be a period of time here where that isn't available to us in a way that makes any sense, you know, or you know, not jury rigged by us. So we'll see.
Yeah, the good news is I think our first October meeting is the 13th. That's pretty far into October. So if it does come to that, we should have at least some heads up.
Yeah. And just a final note, I want to thank, had multiple conversations this week with a variety of council members on things that been working on. So I appreciate all the assistance and thoughts into some of the items that I've discussed tonight from folks. So thanks for that input. That's my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Council Digest, August 12th. Okay, should I move on to the next one? Council Digest, August 19. Council Digest, August 26. Number 5, thank you to the subcommittee for the letter. It is my dream to have those 3 representatives from those 3 entities do a panel. So maybe next year. And then Council Digest, September 2nd. Okay, well, it's 9:16, not too late a meeting. And we are adjourned.
All right, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
All right.
Night.